Welcome and thank you for joining us for this very special video. Now, this year marks the 45th anniversary of one of cinema's most enduring, iconic, and still mesmerizing films, Jaws. That's right. Now, to celebrate this major milestone, we are thrilled to have with us Jaws production designer Joe Alves, and accompanying him is his biographer and author of an exciting new book that dives deep into the film's design, Dennis L. Prince. Now, please join me in welcoming Joe and Dennis to Sideshow today. Yeah! Oh, hello, and thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
What do you say we have a talk, huh?
Okay.
Let's go.
What do you say we get into it? Because I am really excited. Now, Joe, many of our viewers know of you and your incredible resume of work, but not everybody does. So for those that don't, can you tell us exactly how you became a production designer and some of the films and television shows that you yourself have worked on over the course of your career?
Well, back in those days, there was a studio system. 7 different studios, Fox, MGM, Warner Brothers. And at the time, you started as either a junior set designer who did the drafting or an illustrator. And I had background in art school to do both, but it seems like it was easier to become a set designer. And I knocked around. Actually, the first person to give me a job was Bob Kinoshita at a small studio called Ziv. And Bob he did design Robbie the Robot.
Ooh.
I happened to work on that same movie years before when we did the id for Forbidden Planet. So I was working, I never met Bob, but in any case, Bob hired me as a junior set designer, and then over the years, you become a senior set designer, and I worked on his Mad Mad World, and then I became an art director. I worked with Alfred Hitchcock on Torn Curtain. I did a lot of television. I did 48 episodes of Night Gallery, and then I did Steven Spielberg's first 3 movies, Circle Line Express, Jaws, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, that's
so it
kind of a beefy resume there.
Yeah, well, then it was a process, you know. So you worked at the studio, you're pretty much a staff guy, and you're an art director. Later in the 70s, people start getting credits as production designers, but basically it's the same job. It's just a different title change. Oh. So when I did Jaws, I basically was an art director, but they decided to give me the more prestigious title as production designer. And
that works.
That's how that came about.
And then from there, so you had Jaws, you had Close Encounters, and then you've also worked on one of my favorite, Escape from New York, right?
Right.
Oh, I mean, come on.
Well, before that, of course, I did Jaws 2, which was incredibly difficult. And I directed a lot of second unit in that. And yeah, that was interesting, Escape from New York. I went through a period where after I did Jaws 2 and I directed so much of the action sequences, I wanted to pursue directing, and things weren't happening. And my agent, Phil Gersh, big-time agent, said, I think you should go to work. And he said, I'm going to introduce you to a young couple, Deborah Hill and John Carpenter.
Oh,
they got this little movie called Escape from New York. So it was quite a project. It was a lot of fun, and we had some very talented. Dean Cundy was an incredible photographer.
No, I mean it's an iconic film, and the art and the design of it is so crucial. And it's funny that you're just like, oh, this is other project I worked on. It's so impressive.
Well, just a comment about that and John Carpenter. Because I had done big pictures, I was used to making big sets and spending money, and here was a very small picture, but I found with John that I could build half sets. In other words, there's a scene, Lexington Avenue, where Snake Plissken is walking down the street. He climbs over a wall, and we were in a location there, and then we needed to build a set of chock full of nuts. And so they didn't have the money for a studio, So we built it out in the desert. We built this exterior out in the desert. And if you pan to the left, you'd have cactus. If you pan to the right, you'd have New York, Lexington. So John had that ability to compress his thinking and his shots to what was there. Hitchcock was also that way.
Really?
For Hitchcock, we could build half sets because he knew what he wanted, and he would say to me one time, Paul Newman comes down the stairs, he walks over to the registration desk and leaves. And I said, but Mr. Hitchcock, what about the reverse shot? What about over here? Over there? No. He would just say, Mr. Newman comes here, goes there, and that's what you want.
So it's like it's somebody a director that has such a clear vision.
Yes.
The clarity of vision to know this is the movie that I have.
Right.
And this is exactly the frame that I want. And to work with that must sort of make your life a little bit better when working on that, because you don't have to consider all of the aspects
exactly.
of that. You get to have fun within this frame. Which I think
and with
really
John, he was making a bigger picture. It was much bigger than Halloween. And so, like, if I gave him a street, like the airplane crash, and he would have one shot, and that would be it. And so he didn't have reverse shots and things. And, Snake Plissken would walk down that, and he would do the shot to what we had. He wouldn't say, oh, I need this, I need that. Where a lot of directors, they ask for everything, and then you see a fraction of it on the screen.
Yeah. Once the editing process goes down, you're like,
well, they don't. Let's see, what am I going to shoot? Oh, well, I'll shoot this, and you build all this other stuff. I can go on by that.
Now, gentlemen, you have both joined us because you have something really cool that we get to talk about, and I'm really, really excited about this this baby right here. This book is sort of documenting the sort of process, production, and design of Jaws, which is, I would say, many people's favorite movie of all time. We're talking one of the most classic films in all of cinema, like a masterclass in everything. So right here, now Dennis, in the book, you mentioned that Jaws is your favorite film.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Hands down. So if anyone asks me, Dennis, what's your favorite film? Jaws.
Yeah,
I won't even hesitate.
So how did you two end up linking up where you were going to be able to sort of work this biography and work this sort of detailed, like, how does this book happen is what I want to know, because it's so cool. Like, how do you just, like, you're such a fan that you decided just like, I'm going to go for it?
Okay, so it's an interesting story. I was getting ready for a show in Kentucky, a show called Wonderfest. This is in 2014. I was releasing another book, launching it there, called Monster Scenes, the most controversial toys of a generation. So I'm going out to Wonderfest, which is very model-centric, okay? And I see that on the guest list is Joe Alves. And truth be told, back in 1989, I wrote a fan letter to Joe Alves. And Joe Alves responded and even drew me a shark, nice colored pen drawing of a shark. And I was just blown away this man responded to my letter, okay? So we fast forward, 2014, I'm gonna go do this show. I see that Joe Alves is gonna be there. I thought, man, what if I could meet this guy? What if someday I could write a book about Jaws? Because the Jaws log was like one of my favorite books as a kid, okay? Carl Gottlieb's book. And anyway, just kind of had this little notion, what if I can meet him? And so we get to Wonderfest, and I am introduced to Joe.
Well, we had lunch together.
Well, we did. He was the most friendly guy you'd ever want to see.
Jim Diamond was there?
Bill Diamond.
Bill Diamond.
Bill Diamond.
Bill
Yeah,
Diamond.
exactly. And so they tendered this introduction, and I'm sitting at a table with all these guys. We're all having lunch, and I'm over here at what I call the kids' table. I'm like way back here.
You're just watching. Like,
and I'm just like, wow. And I ask a question, or I make a comment, and he looks at me, and he starts answering me.
Yeah.
And my reaction is,
yeah, no, you're a person. Yeah.
He's talking to me. This guy's talking to me. So anyway, we got to have a few meals together. And on the last day of the show, everyone's flying out. And here he is having his breakfast. And I'm coming in to have my breakfast because I got to fly out. He says, oh, I guess we're on the same flight out of Kentucky. Yeah. Well, we should sit together. Sure. Okay. So we sit together and we talk for 3 hours. It's the fastest 3-hour trip I've ever been on. And as he's telling me, and I'm thinking, man, Jaws, Jaws, Jaws. But he's telling me of this career he's just explained to us. And I'm like, wow. And I finally dredged up the courage to pop the question. Have you ever thought about a book?
Really?
Yeah. And
So
that
this
started
was,
that.
So the process to create this book started sort of on a plane after a con in Kentucky. You guys are hanging out, and then so it was kind of your idea to write this book.
The biography was so large, okay, and I thought, and I saw all the material that he has. This guy has an incredible. He has an archive of all of his original material. I was amazed at what he had, and for Close Encounters, for Escape from New York, for everything else that he's done, Jaws 3D, and I thought the joke I made is, Joe, you're going to need a bigger book, because as I'm writing and learning, the book is just getting this large.
But at first you wanted to do just a Jaws book.
I did just want to do
and then you decided to do a biography.
because I realized you're so much more than just
No.
Jaws. But then this opportunity came around, and I thought, beautiful, because everything that I saw about Jaws that I wanted to share with people, that I wanted to know, but I wanted to share with people, we could get it in a book.
Yeah.
And tell it from an entirely different perspective than we've read before.
That's so cool. What a fun way. What a fun way to have that. It's sort of like, it's not a chance meeting, but it's a sort of chance by design meeting that you have here. And now you've created something that is going to delight so many people.
I hope
It's
so,
so
yeah.
cool. Now, Joe, I want to talk about your involvement in Jaws originally, because from what I understand, you were asked to come up with sort of key illustrations for a book that hadn't even been finished yet. I mean, this was, as we look in here and we learn more about Jaws, this thing moved, I think, a lot faster than some people realized. And is that, what was your reaction to working on sort of like an unpublished novel's conceptual illustration?
This was so unusual. First of all, I'm a staff art director. I'm doing whatever shows they tell me to do, whether it's television or a small movie. And I think I'm working, at that time we were doing movies of the week. I think I was doing Double Indemnity, a remake of the movie. And I had worked with Richard Zanuck and David Brown. They produced Sugarland Express, but they also produced Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, all these big movies. So David Brown was the literary guy, and he was married to Helen Gurley Brown, who was the editor of Cosmopolitan. And he's sort of based in New York. So we've finished Sugarland. I'm doing this Double Indemnity, and I think, sort of interesting, I get a call from David Brown. Okay, and he said, Joe, my wife just read this galley sheets of this book about a shark, and it's called Jaws, and she thinks it might make a good movie. And he said, I wonder if you could read the galley sheets and do some concept sketches of the various shark activities in the book. So what was interesting is they didn't have anything with the studio yet. They didn't even have a charge number. So basically, yes, this was the first one.
I'm trying to silently put this out here while we
But
have
you
it.
could
But if you
flip
look
through.
at that,
Yeah,
luckily the studio lights here really kind of pull out this charcoal drawing here of the shark. And this is one of your.
Well, that became the T-shirt, but they didn't have a charge number to pay me, because. So the thing is, and as an art director, I could do an occasional drawing, but if you're going to do a lot of drawings, they should have an illustrator, a different union. And but so I talked to the head of the art department, and he said, well, Zanuck and Brown, go ahead and just do it. So in between doing the television movie, on my spare time, I started doing these illustrations. I did about 30 of them, charcoal drawings, and basically for nothing. And so Stephen wasn't involved in the movie. They had no director. They had nobody there was
It was
the
just a novel.
Galley Sheets and me, and I would go over to Stephen, and because he had a bungalow there, and because we became friends on Sugar Land Express, which was a lot of fun movie. And I was, oh, this is exciting, you know, Stephen. And he said, yeah, I think I want to do a pirate movie, though. I said, well, see what happens, you know, they had interviewed another director, and he kept calling it a whale instead of a shark and stuff. But anyway, before that, I made these 30 drawings, and so we were supposed to have a meeting to convey to the studio, you know, about this movie. I don't know how far you want me to go on this, but
Oh, go on. I don't know if you knew this, but I am just sitting
All
here
right.
like
well, this
I feel like Dennis in Kentucky in 2014.
all right. What makes
just
this
watching.
so unusual
Right.
is I'm an art director, and they have departments: art department, special effects department, camera department. So making a shark is really the special effects department. So Marshall Green, who was head of production, he sort of liked this idea about doing this shark movie because he lived on a boat. He was a really nice guy, and he really loved the ocean. So anyway, they called me. It's in the book there. There's a meeting with Marshall's office at 10 o'clock on October 3rd, 1973. So I took all my drawings, and they had all the department heads there. And in fact, the art department, the camera, and all these, and the special effects. So Steven Spielberg just came onto it, and we used to talk. I said, if we do this, you know, Steven, and we agreed, we didn't want to just do a big rubber shark in a pond with a backdrop, painted backdrop, you know, in the back lake, like they have done things. We want to make a 25-foot shark. And the reason I said 25 foot is because that's twice the size. The best looking shark is 12 feet. As they get bigger, they get fatter. So anyway, that's what I'm on. So I had all these drawings, and I displayed them to all the departments and one by one. And so then you could see all the various activities in the book here, which is, it goes on. That's just me. No,
It's
we
just
don't
you
need
hanging
it.
out
Yeah.
right there. But we see some more right there. We see another one.
Yeah, we could get to where the illustrations are bigger.
This is, it's, here we
Here
go.
we go.
Okay, here we go. Let me just set this baby up right here.
All right, so I mean, doing, you know, and I haven't really researched sharks yet. So I display all these drawings, and then Marshall turns to the visual special effects people, and he said, "Okay, gentlemen, can you make this shark?
Just there. That's just. Can you make a shark?
Can you make a shark?" And they said, "No, it's never been done. We've never had it. We've never did anything." And shoot it in the real ocean. You know, they shoot it back in the lake, you know, where they have control, not in the real ocean. Nobody would do that. And then they said, if we did do it, it would take at least a year to a year and a half to research it and to build it. Besides, he said, we can't do it. We've got bigger movies like the Hindenburg and stuff like that.
Yeah, nothing like Jaws.
You know, and nothing like Jaws.
Small little indie film Jaws.
And Marshall got upset, and he hit it hand on the desk. He says, Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg. And everybody in the room sort of laughed because this was going to be their big George C. Scott movie, the big blimp that explodes. And okay, so that's it. The meeting wraps. Everybody leaves. I'm collecting my drawings and I'm putting them in a portfolio. I start to walk out, and he calls me back. He says, Joe, can you get the shark made? And, you know, ambitious as I am, I certainly can try. And he says, okay, take it off the lot. Now, this was never done. Everything in those days was done on the lot. all the effects, all the camera, you kept it on the lot. So they employed those people. He said, find a crew, take it off the lot, and go build a shark. So I said, sure. And then I started interviewing people to build the shark. And you'll see in the book there, somebody, Jim Casey, he was an illustrator. I was also looking for an illustrator too to help. He said, Bob Matty is retired, I think. He did the giant squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you should talk to him. And I had talked to the guy that did The Godfather and stuff, and he said no, he was busy, but he said, oh, it'd take at least a year and a half to even develop the thing, to see, there's so many problems with the salt water. So I met Bob, and there's a section in there where he said, give me a couple days. And so he came back in a couple of days, and he built this little wire sculpture thing where you pull a lever and the shark mouth opens and then it closes and you pull it back. So that the concept of he could make it move.
It's doable.
Doable. So, okay. He said,
Is that information in here? Is this all in here?
If
Okay.
you turn to that
Absolutely.
page, we could find that page.
As I'm trying to go upside down in here, but that is really cool. What I realize as I'm going through, I'm like, well, I don't want to give away too much of this book, but look at
anyways,
all these.
That's all the sequences. In any case, then he said, we need very specific people. We need a specialist that will do the skin and the mold, and because there's new materials. So we found Roy Abergass, and he was making breakaway bottles. And so we hired Roy to do all the skin. We hired Wood Brothers to do the framework. It was all chromoly tubing. We needed to get a specialist for. So we got 6 people, and I called them the Magnificent Seven. So we put together this group of 7 people to they were going to build the shark, and then I started making also in the book, a 4-foot model of the shark. I went up to San Francisco and I met with an ichthyologist, Leonard Campagno in San Francisco. I think at Stanford, it was at the Steinhardt Inquiry.
I'm sorry, I had to go to this page, by the way.
Yeah, you
it was so intense.
That was my concept. Actually, it was when the little boy got killed, we didn't do it that way. Much more subtle.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put together a team. In the book, you'll see some really good technical drawings. So this.
There's so much. There's so much in this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such a dense book, and this is actually one of the things that I wanted to jump to both of you now.
Yeah.
Like, how long did it take to gather all of this information, to collate it, to organize it, to get it set for in a publishing style? Like, how do you do that? How do you, like, my brain can't fathom organizing all of this information. How long did it take for you guys to do this? Did you do it solo? Did you have help for this?
A lot of it came out of my initial discussions with Joe, of course, and the more I learned, because I had a personal hunger to know this stuff. For my own indulgence, I wanted to know everything about this film. It's always been my favorite film. As I saw all the material that he had, it would draw more questions out of me. And I think over the course of putting this together, I would say, since I've known him since 2014 and we first started talking, is when all this material started coming together. But when we got serious about just doing just this Jaws book, it was about a 1.5 year process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. And what was always interesting is as I'm putting this together, Joe would make sure I'm staying accurate at all times, of course. I tell him the pieces I want to put in. We get the chronology down together because I want to show the process and the chronology of the development of the picture from the designer's standpoint. And every now and then he called me and said, "Hey, guess what I just found?" Because he just found something else. And I'm like, "Show me." Okay, now I got to put this in. Okay.
Now we have to adjust everything.
Right.
We go to the next page.
If we go to the next page.
I think I
all
could
right.
show you.
I am going by some of the coolest stuff to look at.
Well,
and it's not even the stuff that we want
wait,
to
see,
to get to. Look at all these
It's
pages.
way back there. All right, we'll get to it. This is interesting here. Those pages.
These pages right here.
Yeah, I had no idea.
A stunning visual aesthetic right here for you.
Why Dennis wanted to put this in, but I had kept this. When you're a designer, or whatever department, you get a script.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through, and scene by scene, you go through the pages, and then you write, this happens and that happens. And here I made some really early sketches, 3 guys on the boat. So you break the whole thing down. And it's a process of first breaking it down, literally, writing the thing down, and then you start making little sketches. Oh, I see, the shark passes by here. So they're very, very, let's see, early on.
Yeah, it's fun. There's so many. It's funny because it's like they're not Easter eggs so much, but there's so many little, like there's so much mortar to the bricks of building Jaws that I see why everything here is so important. Why it is great to include, like just these visuals alone are just. This is just so stunning to have this sort of classic vision of Amity. There's so much you could have included. Was there anything that you couldn't because you couldn't find or didn't have access to?
We found a lot. And as far as
far
as telling the story, because he had so much, and we had some great photo contributors. A lot of folks who we've worked with, Jim Beller and Matt Taylor and Chris Kiska, a lot of folks from the island who actually had their own private photos that they were so generous to share with us. It really helped build this whole story of how this film evolved. What's interesting about what you're talking about, though, is we go back to those concept sketches, okay? Those sketches are based on an unpublished novel. Mm-hmm. So the novel's not even published. And there's a storyline to that novel, okay? Then here comes, when they decided they're going to do the film, here comes the script. And so Peter Bensley takes first cut of the script, okay? And then Joe takes the script and does a breakdown. And this is a slightly different narrative from the novel, because now it's being treated for film work, right? Okay, so we see how that story changes now. Ultimately, then we get to the film, and as we'll see, later on, we'll probably discuss storyboards and whatnot. Then it takes on yet another narrative
Carl
line.
came in.
Carl came in to punch up the script, right?
Yeah, and Carl came in just a few weeks before we started shooting, but it became much more linear. We got rid of. What was it? The mafia was involved, and her relationship with the ichthyologist and all that stuff. And it became a much linear kind of story.
And what's interesting about the book, though, and this is why it attracted me to the project so much, is we see the evolution of the story from original concept from Benchley to the final film, and even through the filming. And I think Joel will talk about that a little bit later about let's make some final touches before we release wide. The book is able to capture, and you can read the different stories and the evolution of the stories throughout this.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think there's a general sense that a lot of people that are fans of the film and know of the history of the film know that there have been a lot of sort of like, well, this needs to be changed. There's an evolution to the story of Jaws through any manner of reasons why, as we sort of find ourselves, and you get to be the visual sort of, you get to bring that. This is like the visual paragon of that, to sort of bring that in. Is there like one little thing for you that is your favorite, like little behind the scenes pieces of imagery for you guys?
Yeah, actually there is. I could find it for you. There is a beautiful shot.
Well, I guess I'll have to.
Of the shark. We're going to have to go forward quite a bit to
We're
near
gonna
the end of the book.
I can go to the
These
end
are
of the
all
book.
the storyboards. The storyboards are amazing.
So
That photo right there
right
is
here.
absolutely amazing. And in my opinion, that is the quintessential photo because, one, we see the open side of the shark, okay? So we see that there's mechanics involved in this thing. Two, that thing looks terrifying.
Yes.
I don't care what you say, that thing looks terrifying. If a 25-foot one of those
Who's going to argue that?
was coming at me, I don't think I'd try to sit there and determine, is this mechanical or is this real?
Wait, this is a robot. If it was a robot shark, possibly scarier.
Okay,
If
right.
I saw
You
that.
couldn't use that because you could see that's the wrong side.
And we've got the fingers there in front. It's a bit of panic.
Yeah.
Right, for me, that's got to be my favorite photo.
I mean, that's a pretty. I get why you wanted to find this one specific.
There's a good illustration why we had 3 sharks. Since we brought this up, and this is a mistake. We needed 3 sharks because we had 2 of them that we towed from 300 feet away. So if we wanted to go by the boat or out there, the sharks coming, that had to be towed. So here, this is a left to right shark because the other side is open so they can get to the mechanics.
Oh, okay.
So if you're shooting this way, you use this shark. If you're shooting this way, you use a shark that goes that way.
Left shark and right shark.
Exactly. Then we had a platform shark. Okay, you could probably find it in the book. It was a huge platform. Bob Matty was so clever because he had these barrels that float, and if you turn them this way, then they sink. He did the same thing for Orca too when we had to sink the boat. So you have this platform, and it's probably 60, 70 feet long, and it has sort of a rail on it, and then it has this big arm that comes up, and the shark could land on the boat or, specific things. Where the other ones don't land on the boat. This one would land on the boat, it'd go through the cabin, all that stuff. So that one required a certain depth of water, and it required a certain tide change. So we wanted 25 feet, and we wanted a very small tide. The tides here on the West Coast were too big. They're 14 feet.
Yeah.
In Martha's Vineyard, which was perfect for the location, they had a bay there, which was 25 feet and a 2-foot tide. So that's why we ended up shooting that in location to where we shot the movie.
Yeah, that was nice of you to film Jaws in my home state so I could be extra terrified for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That was real nice of you to give me that level of neuroses for my entire childhood.
And look how you've turned out. You're wonderful.
I traveled to Massachusetts a few times because when I built Quent's Shack, they wanted all these permits. I needed this permit from this select one, this one, and this one. They said, oh, you got to get that from the state. So I had to take my model, which is in the book, and go to the Capitol and get permission from the state so I could build the house that we're going to tear down, in that location.
You're like, we're going to have this wicked awesome shack, kid.
We got a lot of that. There's so many things.
Yeah, it's funny too because we could spend.
Book. We could go through it. Yeah.
I feel like we could do just 4 hours of a video of us just flipping through every page and looking it out and looking at that. One of the stories that I have gotten is you and Steven sort of trying to guide the Universal executives into choosing the 25-foot long shark. Whose idea was that? You guys, full size drawings?
Yeah. Let me.
I mean, the amount of fascination you both have with this specific piece, with the book, how much you want to dive in is really good. I like it a lot. I like that. So this piece right here, what do we have?
All right, let me explain what we have here. This is my sculpture, it's 4 feet. This is a 12-foot shark. And I got good research from this and working with my ichthyologist. So I measured out the shark perfectly. And the shape of the shark is a 12-foot shark. And as I've said before, as they get bigger, they get fatter. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want a fat shark. We wanted a...
All sharks are beautiful, but in this case...
So Stephen and I are saying, okay, Joe, 4-foot shark, we'll make it... 12-foot is what we want, and we want to double the 12-foot shark. Mm-hmm. So that's 25 feet. So the studio didn't help us at all. They wanted to know how big the shark was. And so I had a set designer that worked, a staff guy there, John Arenzo. I said, draw me a 20-foot shark, just a line drawn silhouette, and a 30-foot one. And it was my idea that we wanted, and Stephen agreed that we wanted a 25-foot shark, but how we're going to sell it.
Well, it's funny actually that you say that, because we have this part right here that says there is actually a fourth shark. And this one was not officially from the film, right? This is the one, this was at Universal Studios?
Yeah. What happened was basically the movie came out, became a big success, and the Universal amusement, park thing didn't have anything representing Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided, they had the original mold, so they made a fiberglass copy of the original mold. Yeah. And they hung it by the tail, and people stood in front of it and took pictures of themselves with the shark. And they kept that there for many years.
Yeah,
until
I was going to say, in the picture, it looks like it's been there for many years.
Well, no, what happened was then they got the ride, and somehow this guy who has the used car dealership, not a used car part, he got it, and he hung it up, and it was there for years, and it could disintegrated. It was just falling apart. And there's Roy and I who actually made the original mold, and a guy from NPR came out from New York 10 years ago and said he wanted to do a story about this. So we went there, and I said, what we need is Roy there too, because he could identify that it really was made from the original mold. He'll know all the details. And so that's what happened. Mm-hmm. So we went down in the parking lot underground. We put the 20-foot shark here, the 30-foot shark here, and we have all the executives come. And they look, and they say, the 20 doesn't look really all that big. Oh, the 30 is much too big. That's. I said, how about something in between? 25 feet. That's a good idea. You guys like 20? Oh, yeah, that's great. So we gave them a choice. What we wanted, we didn't show them. See, because
it's smart.
Then they would have an opinion. Here, they have a choice.
And
too small, too big, down the middle.
And now it can kind of seem like it's their idea a little bit, and then
yes,
they can own it. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing about executives. They, if you ever saw the Ford versus Ferrari movie, it's out now. You have the Ford executives telling Carroll Shelby about how to race cars. And you have executives in a lot of business like that tell the people that really know what to do, well, maybe you should do it this way. Fortunately, we didn't have much interference.
Yeah.
Because
it seems like you got what you wanted in this with this piece right there. Oh, I love it. Look at it.
I just say Marshall Green, who was the head of production, who was the water guy, he was supportive.
Oh, I would say too. Once the film hit theaters and then everybody was.
But they tried to stop the movie 4 times.
You can't stop Jaws. I don't know how many sequels we need to tell people that you can't stop Jaws.
Let me tell you, when we got back from location, we were over budget, over schedule. We were not heroes. They took the sharks and they threw them in the back lot, let them rot. They sold the boat. They sold the orca to some guy for some price. And then the movie came out, and the box office just rolled up.
It wouldn't stop.
And then we got to get the boat back, and we have to have a shark for the thing. So that's when they build the plastic shark.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you had mentioned you and the Magnificent Seven. Are any of those sharks still in existence? The ones, the original sharks, or did they?
No, they did. What happened was they literally had so little confidence in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a couple. Well, maybe not a quick story, but anyway. they felt that the movie was nothing. We don't need a shark anymore. So they had a screening in Texas, and I didn't go to that one. And it was okay. It was pretty well received. And Stephen came to me and he said, you know, Joe, we got 4 screams. I think we could get 5 or more, but I need a few things. Now we're done. We're wrapped. The movie is, there's no crew. There's nothing. He said, I need a piece of the orca, the bottom of the boat. When the shark, when they're singing, show me the way to go home, boom, boom, and then the shark is hitting the boat, boom, boom, and water starts breaking the boat up. He says, I need that. And I also, when they go look for Ben Gardner, and there's a hole, and Dreyfus finds the tooth, he says, if I could get the head coming out of that hole, I think we'd get more screams. So I was working on my house, and I had some help from a young guy that worked on the movie, and we built a section of the hull, and we also built a section of the hull with a hole. So the one that goes boom, 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 Stephen, we shot it in my driveway with a hose.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, this is a big movie. We shot that scene in my driveway with a sledgehammer and a hose, and that was the shark. Then he somehow, I don't know where he found an underwater camera, and somebody stole the head from the makeup department. And we went to Verna Fields, who won the Academy Award for editing Jaws, and we shot the shark, we shot the hole, and the head, Ben Gardner's head, coming out. You know, where you see, they go down there and the head pops out. So we had dailies of that, and the studio said, well, there can't be dailies, the movie's over. We wrapped that, weeks and weeks ago. So they saw this, and they edited it into the film, and we had a screening in the LA area, and it's the first time that I saw it complete with an audience, and my fear was that people were going to laugh, not scream. And the reason I thought they were going to laugh is when the shark worked, you take away John Williams' music, just the shark going, it would make these incredible sounds because of the valves and rams and go. So after the dramatic scene of the shark, cut, everybody started laughing. Silly, look at that damn silly shark, makes so much noise. So some of us had, that were very closely involved with the shark, had the fear that they were going to laugh.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't laugh. They started screaming and screaming. And the executives, the ones that are so smart, they go, oh, gee, this might be a good movie. And they went into the men's room, Sid Sheinberg, Lou Wasserman, some other executives, and they said, we have to release this picture. Normally, in those days, they would release it a few big theaters in big cities, and then they see how the audience would grow. So they're going to release this at 450 theaters. That was huge. That was the biggest release in those days, because they didn't release pictures in the summer for a big thing. It was generally in November for the Academy Award nominations. No summer release. This was the biggest first summer release.
This was what kind of kicks off
the summer shows.
The summer blockbuster, yeah.
So they released it in 450 theaters, and I'll never forget, I went rafting someplace, and I came back. There's a little town up in the mountains here, and there was this huge line in this little, what the hell's that? We followed the line, and it was a theater. It was Jaws was playing.
People was waiting to see Jaws.
Yeah. And I thought, what? What happened? How'd that happen? This is a picture they didn't want to make.
I mean, isn't that why this is such a famously storied film, I think, is that this was sort of the little film that could. Mm-hmm. It starts with an unfinished novel and some charcoal drawings, and eventually... a very young director. Yes.
He did Sugar Land Express, and he did a television movie that was pretty successful.
Duel.
Duel, yeah.
But I met him on Night Gallery and stuff. But no, there were guys like him, 10, 12 years old that freaked out.
Bunch of nerds, yeah.
I'm still 10, 12 years old. I'm still freaked out.
Well, I think, it's not, you said, you're like, yeah, it's guys like him that were 10 and 12 years old. That's not it, though. It was, the country, the entire country. People in Idaho were afraid to swim in ponds and lakes because of Jaws. Like, the cultural significance of this film can't be understated. Because I think one of the cool things is you had stated, like, you're very close to it, so you didn't know how people were going to react because you remember the hydraulic mechanical sounds of a giant robot shark. But for people like myself and Dennis, we saw a shark.
Exactly.
I kept looking at the flaws.
You're too close.
And a couple years ago, when we were doing the thing at Catalina, we had the screening in Catalina. Dennis was there, and we were promoting the book. And for 6 months, they had a display of my drawings, and Greg Nicotero had made the 3 characters. They were so real. They had hair on their arms, and they were standing on the stern of the boat. It was just an incredible show. But anyway, they were going to screen it outside in the big theater, and the lady that runs the museum, she's talked and I talked. She said, well, Joe's going to answer the questions after the movie. And so my wife had a seat, and I thought, I don't need to see this again. And anyway, I had to. And I got to tell you, and I watched the movie, and I wasn't thinking about what I did. I was just watching the movie. And the third act, those 3 guys, the rough old fisherman, the smart-ass ichthyologist, and the guy that didn't want to be there anyway. Yeah. And that relationship was so strong. He breaks the radio. He crushes the can. He crushes a styrofoam. I mean, Stephen really captured it. And when they're doing the scar scenes, and that gave me an idea. After we did the scar scenes, I told Stephen, I said, Stephen, because I didn't really sketch it, we really should have the shark come into the cabin, and then we could see relatively how big it is. Because here we have this wonderful scene with the guys drinking. If the shark comes to the cabin and it takes up the whole cabin, you realize, holy crap, this is... And he said, that would be great. I said, but I don't have a breakaway cabin. And so this was almost the end of the shoot. So I'm at Martha's Vineyard, and I needed to get breakaway glass. I needed to get balsa wood. It was a funny scene. Everybody was really tired.
It's funny that you set yourself up for that.
I set myself up, but really screwed myself. And so we got the windows and the side, so it was perfect. And I made 3. So the shark comes in, it wiggles, and it goes out, and everybody laughs, and they were tired. It's terrible. Didn't work. Okay, bring number 2 in. So shark comes in, and it didn't work. And I said, Stephen, before you let the shark go back, I said, what if you shoot the thing leaving, with the air tank in his mouth, and then see if we can get a real clear break-in for the third. He said, good idea, Joe. Okay. And so we got that. Now we got 1 more left, and that's it. We either get the shark breaking through, and it broke through. Bob Matty did something. I don't know what he did to her, but it just came through perfectly, into the cabin. And he cut to Scheider, and he kept it. And so that was the last shot. It was
wow.
It was pretty exciting, but that's the way the movie went, And then Steven wanted to go back and cut, so he said, I'm going to leave a few shots for you to direct, and one of them was a little kid on the raft, so I directed that sequence in there. But so much of that was, we'll try and see what happens. And if this doesn't work, And let me say this. It's probably a question you're going to ask, so I'll answer it first.
Oh, it just saves me the trouble. I'm just going to sit back.
No.
Relax.
All right. No, the thing is people, a lot of critics say, oh, we didn't use the shark much because it didn't work. Wrong. If you look at the book, there's like 200 storyboards there. Everything that's there we shot.
Yes.
Okay? Stephen's concept was sort of a Hitchcock thing. We'll take the yellow barrels and we make that the shark. Not because the shark didn't work, because it's suspenseful.
Yeah.
There's a barrel. What's attached to the barrel?
Yeah.
The shark. He can't go down with two, he goes down with two. How big is he? So we substituted the barrels for dramatic purposes, not because the shark didn't work.
Yeah, that's an interesting correction because I think a lot of people have had that idea that it was sort of accidental, that the suspense was built up. But no, this was actually planned, which is really cool. And you have so many fascinating memories from the shoot. I am so lucky to hear you tell them. I'm going to cut to Dennis. I have a question. What from memories for you? What's your favorite sort of memory of working on the book?
Working on the book really is getting the revelation of everything that Joe's explaining to us. To really understand, we have those the lore out there of the shark didn't work, things like that. And actually, what we did, we learned is that no, it went as they planned it to go. Now, did they have challenges? Yes. You said the little picture that could. I sometimes say this is like the film that didn't want to be made. But Joe and Stephen determined, no, we are going to make this film. And my favorite, I think, experience is learning how these guys attacked this film, if you will, to the point of the shark coming in through the cabin, and they're down to the last balsa wood frame. The story I recently got from a Martha's Vineyard harbor master who was there during that sequence. Bob Matty saying, okay, you guys, let me show you what my shark can do. Because Bob Matty was taking a lot of heat for the shark.
Yeah.
And if it was struggling or it wasn't doing exactly what they wanted it to do. And he said, let me show you what my shark can do. And to that last cut, bam, he comes in exactly how they want it to. And it's like, bah, right? These guys were determined. And they weren't going to take no for an answer. Even to the point of, by hook and by crook, let's get that fifth scream, okay? Stephen and Joe, the whole team that worked on this film, they had a vision for what this film could be. These guys believed it, and I'm so glad that they didn't relent on that vision, okay? And by putting this book together and learning these stories and asking more questions, and I'd get answers from Joe, and then I have more questions still, I get to understand how this thing happened. And it's sometimes, as a film enthusiast, you don't want to see behind the curtain, basically.
Yeah.
You don't want to have
You don't know how the sausage is made.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the facade broken. You want to stay in the fantasy. This is so layered. There's a fantasy to the reality almost.
Yeah, it can build on your fandom because you've already had your fandom. And this is interesting too, because I want to build off of something that you said, where it is sort of the film that didn't want to be made. They were so determined to make this film, and what they were doing was being determined to make a piece of art that was a gift to us.
Absolutely.
That was a treasure that we got, and it was really through that determination and sort of artistic vision that certain people would never be able to see.
And a little aside to that too is, as we talked about this project, it's 45 years now since the film came out. I'm always happy to delve into it, but we both asked ourselves, does the world need another Jaws book?
Yep.
Okay. And as we discussed it, as I saw the material, as I learned more about it and learned what excited me as a fan, as an enthusiast of the film, I thought, yeah, I definitely think there's room for this book because I don't think this story has been told yet. And when I talked to someone like Greg Nicotero, he's in my age group. He and I were both affected by this film. He went a different direction than I went, obviously. We're both just like, what else is there that I don't know? What else haven't I heard? I want to hear it. we're constantly digging for more and more about this.
Well, what's in here too, you're like, does the world need a new Jaws book? As I'm flipping through this and as I am going through it, clearly, because there's so much in here. This is such a dense book. I mean, it's not small, it's thick, it's big, it's very visual. This is a coffee table book almost by definition.
Let me just clarify something.
Yeah.
There's the Jaws log.
Yes.
And that's about the making of the movie. And most of the articles about movies focus on the director, the writer, or the actors. Almost never do they have books or talk about the people that precede that.
Yes.
So what this book does is it talks about the designing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just me, it's the team. Like, okay, I did concept sketches, but I had fortunate Frank Wormser, who was a set designer, studio guy, and he had been a Lockheed employee, so he was a Lockheed engineer.
Wow.
So he was an airplane guy, and I found him there, and so I put him with Bob Matty to do all those highly technical drawings. So that was one team there. Do you understand? Yeah. And then we had Don Chandler, who had done some monsters for me for a Betty Davis horror film that I did. And he did the sculpting. He took my 4-foot shark and made it.
Yeah, what a team.
What a team.
And this is an art history book, by the way.
So this is about the team that made these things.
And that's what's so great about this too, is that this is such an artistic perspective beyond what you were saying about just direction, acting, or writing, to really be like, well, there's such a fine art piece to this. There's mechanical art, there's sculpture, there's drawing, there's so much in here that sort of builds that up. And I am just enamored with this book. I am so excited.
And what you're going to see, pardon me, is that this man is a good artist.
Yeah,
he really
it's
is.
pretty
Now
good.
he'll be humble and he'll tell you he doesn't think he's that great. No, he really is.
Tom writes better. He did too.
But if you look at his storyboards and if you carefully review all these storyboards, and this is the first time all of his storyboards have ever been published. Okay, the complete collection of his storyboards, the binder of storyboards that he carried with him on set every day. Okay, we've got all those in here. If you look at his renditions in those storyboards, his ability to render movement, reaction,
Sequential stuff.
it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's really quite good. And to your point, yeah, it tells the story of the making of this picture, but there's stories within the stories within. This is layers deep that even surprised me as we were putting it together, and as a team at Titan Books, who've done a beautiful job in presenting this thing. It's just, there's multiple layers in this book.
And what a great experience as both a fan yourself, but also as a creator, as a person who is chronicling something like this. Joe, I want one last thing I want to talk about real quick, because Jaws has sort of been this film that's been cited by so many working professionals as the reason that they got into film, the reason that they wanted to create their art. How does that feel to know that something that you worked on over 45 years ago now has influenced such a generation of creatives to follow their passions? I mean, how does that feel?
Somebody asked me after I finished Jaws, what do I want to do? You know, after we came back from location. And I said, get another job. And that's really the truth, what happens. I finished Jaws, went out, I got to get another job. And so what happened was I went off the lot and I did a thing called Embryo with Rock Hudson, a small picture. And then Stephen and I went skiing, snow skiing up in Mammoth Lakes. And we got snowed in. And he said, I got this script I'm working on. It's called Watch the Sky. And we had Dr. Hynek's book, which had Close Encounters of the First Kind, you know. And so then I was focused on Close Encounters. I didn't think about Jaws anymore. I was focused on huge project, Close Encounters. And then after that came Jaws 2, and that was another thing, and they made me a producer, and I directed all the second unit. And then, Escape from New York, and then I directed Jaws 3D, and then life goes on. And frankly, I sort of forgot about Jaws. Now, what happened was, come something like, nobody was really talking about it. It's sort of the late 90s, for some reason, I started getting these, could you sign this picture? And we had a 30-year anniversary, and Greg Nicotero and Jim Bella, they said, you should sell copies of your drawings. I said, where? How do I do? Oh, no, online. You should go to these shows. Jeffrey Kramer was one of the actors. Oh, yeah, they had these shows. So then I became aware that I had these drawings that you could buy, copies, and, people were talking about Jaws. In the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, it seemed like it sort of rebirthed.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm sort of thrown back a little bit. Yeah. I started going to these shows, the ones that I met, and so probably 2002, 2003, something like that, I started becoming more aware that people are interested.
Yeah, the growth of convention culture.
But for the 20 years after the movie, I thought about 2, and that was really hard. Mm-hmm. Now, the critics didn't like 3, they didn't like 2, and they didn't like 1. I started reviewing the criticisms, and they killed me on 3, because there weren't many 3s, and it was 3D, complicated. 2 was a huge success financially, so was 3. But they were, it was something else.
It's different than Jaws, and people.
Yeah, and but the sharks didn't like Jaws either. The critics didn't like this.
You can call them sharks.
The sharks, they are the sharks. The critics criticized. If you look at it, say, so somehow, over the years, as people like Dennis and Greg Nicotero, J.J. Abrams, and all that, those filmmakers grew up, started doing their own films, and then they started talking about this 10, 12, 15 years later. Oh, yeah, I was inspired by Jaws, Mm-hmm. And then, oh, really, what's that? I have kids that come to these shows, and they're 10, 12, 13 years old, and they're Jaws fans.
Yeah.
And it was done before.
He'll tell them what's interesting about that when these kids say, this is my favorite film. He'll look at the kid, and then he'll look at the parent and says, your dad wasn't even born when Jaws came out. It's just, it has a staying power.
This is a forever movie. This is literally, it's never going to go away. This is we're going to be here 45 years from now, celebrating a 90th anniversary. All 3 of us together. Why not?
Yeah, of course.
Sure, we'll figure it out.
Brew some coffee.
Yeah, right? We had a great coffee here at Sideshow. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
you. Means the world. And thank you all for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. Now, if you would like to pick up your own copy of Joe Alves Designing Jaws, all you got to do is head to the link right here below. Thank you so much to our guests, Joe Alves and Dennis L. Prince. Now, thank you all for joining us, of course. And don't forget to let your geek side show. Hey, did you like that video? Be sure to subscribe by clicking the S icon on your screen and click that bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is posted. If you'd like more info on the items featured in this video, click the link provided under Product Info. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let your geek side show.